Hey everybody. So I'm going to continue reading Marshfield Dreams. Just to remind you of where we left off since we didn't have a read aloud last week. Ended with the chapter about the chicks, where Ralph and his siblings get some baby chickens and one of them dies, unfortunately. Okay, the next chapter is called Fresh Eggs. The 5 remaining chicks grew fast. They gobbled up the bag of chicken feed in less than 2 weeks, and Dad had to go back for another bag. As the chicks got older, their looks changed. They weren't quite so round and fuzzy anymore, but what they lost in cuteness, they gained in spunk. Pretty soon, they could hop out of their box and run around the backyard. They'd stay in a group walking around, pecking at seeds, ants, and spiders. The chicks stayed outside most of the time now, even at night. The way they looked, all wide-eyed and alert, made it seem like they were just thinking hard about something, even though Jimmy insisted that their brains were too tiny to think very much. They would have been good pets except for one problem. They pooped all over the place. I tried to avoid stepping in it, but you couldn't always see it on the grass. The poop got on our shoes and we tracked it in the house, staining the rugs and stairs and making everything stink into the high heavens. Mom went absolutely nuts. Take off those shoes. Leave them outside. Do you want to clean this stuff up? I never, ever should have taken those chicks into the house in the first place. Easy, Dad said, helping her clean up the mess. Remember, fresh eggs are coming. I'm about to come unglued, she shot back. Early one Saturday morning, I heard something outside my window, a sound that was strangely familiar. When I rushed to the kitchen, I heard it again. Cock-a-doodle-doo! Some of the other kids ran into the kitchen, too. Dad stumbled in, half asleep. What time is it? He asked, peering at the clock. 5:15 a.m. Hey, Dad, they're roosters, Jimmy said, laughing. Roosters? Dad went out to the window, looking out at the thin morning light. Are you sure? Yeah, I just watched them crowing, Jimmy said. Look, they're all doing it. We pressed our faces to the windows in the direction of the backyard. Sure enough, they were cock-a-doodle-doing. So roosters are male chickens, so they can't lay eggs. Roosters, roosters! Jimmy, Tommy, and I started jumping around, screaming with laughter. The little kids looked confused. Roosters are boy chickens, Lainey explained. They don't lay eggs, only hens do. They're not going to be hens? Bobby asked. Nope. Right then, Mom walked into the kitchen carrying Kathy. They're roosters, Mom, I told her. Mom stared at Dad. Fresh eggs, she said to him. Isn't that what you promised? Isn't that what you said? It looks like we'll be waiting a long time for those eggs. Lainey and I giggled. I'm sorry, Dad said. He looked sort of dazed. I had no idea they were roosters. I mean, the man never told us that, did he, Lainey? Nope, she shook her head. Guess I'll have to change Jasmine's name to a boy name. The sound was loud and shrill. Cock-a-doodle-doo! The neighbors will love this, Dad muttered. Just what this family needs, Mom said, looking down at Kathy. 5 more boys in the house. And the next chapter is called Fletcher. Here's a picture of Johnny in the playpen. Jimmy wanted a hunting crossbow. There was no way Dad would let him get one, so Jimmy had to settle for a bow. But it wasn't a toy. It was a real bow with heavy string and pointed arrows that could pierce the bark of a tree. In the garage, Dad helped him string it. Your ancestors were English bow makers, Dad said, the Fletchers, who lived a long time ago. See, this part of the arrow with the feathers on it, that's called the fletching. Yeah, Jimmy said, running his hand down the smooth fiberglass bow. He was barely listening. The only thing he cared about was getting to shoot. But first, Dad had to repeat for the 10th time his safety lecture. A bow and arrow is a deadly weapon. Don't ever point the arrow at anybody. Shoot only at the target. Stand back when somebody is shooting. Okay, Jimmy replied. Dad followed us into the backyard, where he had draped a plastic target over a bale of hay. Jimmy pulled back the bowstring, released the first arrow, and hit it, out the outer ring of the target. Good shot, Dad said. Okay, have fun. Just be careful. We will, Jimmy promised. The moment Dad went inside, Jimmy turned to look at me. Watch this, he said. Before I could say a word, Jimmy had fitted an arrow into the string, pulled it back, and shot it straight up. The arrow flew like a rocket until I could see nothing but a dot, a point of light glinting at the top of the sky. But a second later, the arrow looked bigger. It was coming down. "Look out!" Jimmy yelled. We both scrambled to get out of the way, but I hesitated, not sure which way to go. I guessed right. The arrow brushed past my ear and embedded itself in the ground less than 1 inch from my sneaker. "That was close," I said. "Hey!" Dad came down the back steps, practically running toward us. From the angry look on his face, I knew he had seen the whole thing. He grabbed the bow from Jimmy and sent us both to our bedroom for the rest of the day. That night, I laid awake in bed, reliving my close escape. When that arrow brushed past my ear, it made a soft hissing sound as if my ancestors were trying to whisper to me. All right, the next chapter is called Tripods, and this is Jimmy with Kathy. Dad paid a man to clear the acre of woods right behind our house. On Saturday morning, we watched him bulldoze bushes and trees. When he had finished, there was a stack of pine logs, each about 30 feet long and 6 inches wide at the thickest point, piled at one side of the clearing. The logs gave Jimmy an idea. He asked me and Tommy to help him carry 9 of them to the middle of the clearing. "I put them in threes," Jimmy said. He directed us to lay the logs so that they fit together. Andy came over from next door. "What are you doing?" he asked. "You'll see." Jimmy took some twine and started working a knot in the middle place where the 3 logs overlapped, like this. "You know how to tie them together?" I asked. "I'm going to use a lash knot," Jimmy replied. "It's too loose." "No, it's not," Jimmy said. He finished lashing the logs together and stood up. "Now we're going to lift them, but we can't do it by ourselves. We're going to need a lot of kids to help." "I'll help," Bobby offered. "Okay," Jimmy said with a laugh, "but we need some big kids too." Pretty soon my friends Steve and Larry showed up. Lee Parker, who was already in junior high, came over too. Jimmy wasted no time putting them to work. "We'll need 2 kids on each log," he said. "Ralph and Larry, you guys lift the middle." "Everybody ready?" "Yeah." "Okay, lift." Larry and I got in the middle and began to lift. As we did, the 3-legged thingamajig began to rise up from the ground. Jimmy was right about the rope. The knot tightened as the middle part went higher. "Come on," Jimmy yelled. "Push, lift." Up, sweating, gasping, grunting, we lifted the logs. Pretty soon, the middle part was over our heads, and we couldn't reach it anymore. Larry got a 2x4 and used that to keep pushing it skyward. "That's good," Jimmy cried. "That's high enough." Everybody cheered. I wiped sweat from my face and looked up. The top of the tripod stood about 25 feet off of the ground, but we didn't have any time to rest. "2 more to go," Jimmy yelled, and we started erecting the second tripod. On this one, he added an extra rope when he lashed the logs together. When we got the structure into place, the rope hung down from the middle. Tommy grabbed the rope and swung back and forth. "My dad's got some extra tires," Larry offered, "for a rope swing." "We could do that later," Jimmy yelled. "Come on, 1 more to go." By the time we had finished, we were exhausted, panting like dogs. But we had done it. All 3 tripods were standing. It was a typical Jimmy stunt, much harder than anything a teacher would ever ask him to do in school. Jimmy would never earn a grade for imagining those tripods, let alone letting them be built. But I knew what he had done, and the other kids did too. In some ways, my brother was a genius. Dad came outside. All the kids kept quiet while he made a careful inspection, slowly walking around the structures, peering up, touching the logs. That's what they look like. That's what a tripod is. "What are they anyway?" he finally asked. "Tripods," Jimmy explained. "Tripods," Dad nodded. "You realize that if they fall apart and some kid breaks his neck, I'm responsible?" "They won't fall apart," Jimmy said. Dad pushed on one of the logs, but it hardly moved. "No, I guess they're not going anyplace," he said. "They seem solid." "They're solid, all right," Jimmy told him. "What are they for?" Dad asked, smiling. "I just wanted to build them," Jimmy shrugged, "to see if I could." Next morning, when I stepped outside, the sight of those huge tripods took me by surprise. Even though I'd helped build them, they looked so strange, as if creatures from another planet had chosen my backyard of all places to land their spaceships. Okay, and the last chapter for today is called Attack. And here's a picture of Lainey in front of the Fletcher house. And he says, "It wasn't as big as it looks." Well, yeah, when you have 9 kids and 5 chickens in a house, right? Dad was away on a business trip. It had snowed on and off all day, and it was cold. In the afternoon, Mom bundled up the little kids and took everyone food shopping. We came home an hour later and carried all the grocery bags into the kitchen. We had just started to unpack when Lainey came flying in. "The roosters!" she cried. "They're dead!" Dead? Outside the chicken coop looked like a murder site. The fence smashed in, ugly blotches of blood all over the snow. We couldn't see any rooster bodies, but feathers were scattered everywhere. I stood there shocked, trying to force icy air into my lungs. "We were attacked," I finally croaked. "My God!" Mom bent down to pick a feather stained with blood. "What happened?" Bobby and Johnny asked at the same time. "Lainey, could you please take the little kids inside?" Mom said, moving so she blocked their view of the bloody pen. "I don't want them to see this. Stay with the baby. I'll be right in." "Okay," Lainey said, biting her lower lip. She led Bobby, John, and Joey into the house. "Who would do this?" Tommy demanded. "Probably a fox or a dog," Jimmy said, pointing. There were footprints in the snow, dozens of them. "Look." "I bet it was a dog," Mom said, jamming her hands under her armpits for warmth. On her face was a grim expression I'd never seen before. "The Wallace's dog, Buster, has been snooping around here for the last few weeks." "Buster," Tommy yelled. "I'll bust him." "Hey, I'm cold," Mom said, hugging herself. "Let's go inside." "I'm going to check around the house first," Jimmy told her. "Me too," I said. We searched behind and under every bush in the front and backyards, looking for the roosters, but nothing. The sun was going down fast, painting the snow blue. "They're gone," I said inside the kitchen. "They're dead," Lainey said in a dazed voice. When she said that, Johnny and Joey looked like they were about to cry. "We don't know that for sure," Mom said. "Some got killed, no doubt, but some have escaped, could have escaped, and might still be alive." "Really?" Something hopeful flickered in Lainey's eyes. "Where?" "Ailes Woods," Jimmy suggested. "That's where I'd go. There's plenty of places to hide in there." "I wish Dad was here," Lainey put in. "Daddy," said Kathy. "Me too," Bobby said, starting to cry. He came over and he leaned against Mom. "Well, he's not," Mom said, wiping Bobby's nose. She took a deep breath, and it started to get dark. "So here's what we're going to do. I'll go out into the woods to look for survivors. I'll feed those roosters every day when you're in school. They'll know my voice, they'll come to me. You'll all stay here." "You better take me with you," Jimmy said. "I know these woods a lot better than you." "True," Mom looked over at me. "Okay, you and Lainey keep an eye on everyone and put away the groceries, please." Mom opened the closet door and took out Dad's winter coat. It was so huge, it completely swallowed her. She pulled on boots, gloves, hat, and a scarf. Jimmy only put on his coat, and even Mom had to make him zipper it. "Wish us luck," she said. "We don't need luck," Jimmy said, smiling. "We got me." "I hope you're right," Mom told him. She pulled open the door and clomped down the back stairs with Jimmy behind her. The rest of us stood at the window, watching them head toward Ailes Woods. Lainey and I put away the groceries. Then there was nothing to do but sit around the kitchen and wait while the twilight thickened outside. "Look," Bobby said, pointing outside. A couple of snowflakes brushed against the window. "Where's Mom?" Joey whispered. "Don't worry," Lainey told him. "She'll be here soon." We waited 20 minutes, half hour. Then it was pretty much dark, and I began to worry. Suddenly, Tommy gave a yell. "Look!" "I don't see anything," I said, peering out. Two shapes appeared in the darkness. There they were, Mom and Jimmy, charging across the snowy lawn. I was amazed to see Jimmy walking with his right arm extended, a rooster perched on that arm. Mom had a rooster on one of her arms, too. Two! They found two! They didn't head to the broken chicken pen. Instead, they tromped up the steps and in through the back door without even stopping to shake the snow off their boots. "You did it!" Everyone cheered. "Those roosters are heavier than you think," Mom said, flopping into a chair. The two birds moved excitedly on the linoleum floor and ruffled their feathers, shaking off the cold. "It's Peepers!" Lainey cried, saying the name of her rooster. "You can't tell," Jimmy said, pulling off his coat. "I can so! Look at the white spot on his back feathers. And the other one's yours, Jimmy. It's Steven." "Steven? Really? Well, maybe you're right," Jimmy agreed. Johnny put some chicken feed on the floor, and the roosters began eagerly pecking it up. "How'd you find them?" I asked. "When we went far back into the woods," Mom said, "I kept calling and calling, hoping that they'd hear my voice and recognize it." "Yeah, and then we heard a noise like a squawk," Jimmy explained, "and then I looked up and saw one 20 feet up in a tree." "I didn't know that roosters could fly," Bobby said, grinning. "I called a few times and it flew down to me," Mom exclaimed, and we found the other one about 50 feet away. They looked awfully cold and jittery, poor things. We all agreed the survivors were Stephen and Peepers, which meant that my rooster, Sunshine, probably died in the attack. In bed, I cried, muffling the sound so Jimmy wouldn't hear, but knowing that Stephen and Peepers had escaped alive softened the ache in my chest. That night, Mom let Stephen and Peepers sleep in the basement. Dad came home and rebuilt the chicken coop. He replaced the wooden supports on the fence with a much heavier wood. and he added a hinged top so that the latch locked. At school, Jimmy bragged about the great rooster rescue in the deepest part of Ailes Woods. But to me, Mom was the real hero of the story. She never gave up on those two roosters. Somehow she had known that they would be alive, and she braved darkness, cold, and snow to bring them back.